All right, welcome back to Thrive After Dark, episode 11. Today's actually a really exciting one because we have our first guest.
I know, so exciting. We have the renowned Alex Underwood, and he is outstanding.
He's such a great guy.
Oh my gosh, Alex is unbelievable. He is a keynote speaker and an expert in human behavior, communication, and consciousness. And we all know these subjects are running wild right now, but Alex has been doing this work for decades. So we met Alex years ago through DISC. He specialized in reading DISC assessments. He specialized in helping you know how to work together through your DISC assessments. And so this time, you and I just updated our DISC assessment, and Alex is going to walk through each of ours individually and then ours as a collective, how we work together. I think one of the coolest things that our viewers can get from Alex joining us and going through our DISCs is the absolute incredibleness, easiness that comes from understanding the other person through an assessment. It removes all this judgment and all this nonsense that we filter the other person's behavior through, and really just puts it on paper and says, no, this is how this guy is. This is how you are. And this is how you can best work together.
It's like a roadmap to understand you with an additional layer of how to talk to you.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think that's honestly the most powerful piece. And it can work in platonic relationships, coworkers, bosses, one-on-one romantic relationships. He's worked with us as husband and wife, not just as business partners. So
he's taught us things that
insightful.
We honestly didn't know about each other, but they were spot on.
Yeah.
That we didn't even know about ourselves.
Of being together, he was like, by the way, has Justin ever done this? And I'm like, what? Yes.
Yeah, all the time. Right.
Well, what that actually means is boom. And I was like, oh my God.
And here's why. Right.
You saved our lives. Yeah. So without further ado, we're going to introduce the man, the myth, the legend, Alex Underwood to you right now. Alex, thank you so much for being here with us today. And that is quite the title. Help us understand what that exactly means.
So thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to be here with you guys. Title, it's an interesting title. I've gone through a lot of iterations over the years. Don't ask me about my Vegas title. I'll have to tell you about that one a different time. But it's interesting to be called an expert. It's interesting to be called an expert in something that my training and experience has come through living it. I've got a bachelor's degree in liberal studies. I don't have a master's or a doctorate. I haven't studied extensively in a college or formal education. But when I was working in St. Louis, I had medical doctors come to me who were suicidally depressed. And I could help them because if they went to go get help, they would have to have been reported. And so they could come to me. I worked with kids. I've worked with adults. When the Vegas shooting happened, I was one of 100 mental health providers. So my experience in human behavior and why people do what they do is because I have an inquisitive mind that doesn't stop looking for answers. I've got a background as an engineer. I worked for Boeing back before all of this stuff started happening. I left. That's probably part of the problem. But when I worked at Boeing, and so I started off, I was a music major, then I was an engineer, and then I left engineering, and now I do psychology, and people go, that's all different. I go, no, it's just patterns. So in layman's terms, to make it very simple for everybody, I see the patterns that nobody else can see, and I just show them to you. And once you understand the patterns, anything's possible. It's like opening the code of the matrix. Once you understand, oh, they're not aggressive, they're just trying to keep things moving forward. Aggressive is just a means for doing that. So then how do I adjust so that we can keep moving forward so they don't have to be aggressive, because that's a response pattern to get what they want. And it's the only structure they have. So how can I give them a new structure? The more you understand why you do what you do or other people do what you do, the three aspects, the human behavior, why do people do things, communication, how do you do it with somebody else, and consciousness. What's the mindset or the framework you've created in your mind in order to make that reality, the interaction, and the self operate that way? Does that make sense?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. We've loved, just for context for anybody watching this, we have worked with Alex professionally and personally. You've been out to our home, you've been out to our business, and it's been an absolute, I would say, game changer.
Yeah.
It really opened our minds to thinking a little bit differently, to processing a little bit differently, perspective shifting without a doubt, and was monumental in a very change agent moment for us professionally. So
Yeah. I mean, it opened our eyes to things that, we knew existed, but from an angle in which we've never actually approached it from, which was really, really cool. And it's just been great over the years to become what I consider now friends,
Yes. Yeah, we made tortillas together in the kitchen.
I taught you my family tortilla recipe,
All right. So with the knowledge we have and the work we've done together, we thought it would be really fun for the folks viewing this to learn what DISC is. And so let's start with one, it's an assessment of personality, of thought process, right? And I'm sure you can go way deeper into what it means.
DISC is not assessment of thought process. DISC is not an assessment of personality. DISC measures behavioral tendencies.
It's what? Say that again.
Behavioral tendencies.
That's what I was going to say.
Behave.
Yes, of course. Behavioral tendencies. Okay, so can you define DISC for us while I thumb up everything? I'm very excited.
In the early 1920s, there was a division in the psychological community. There's a group of people who wanted to study abnormal psychology, and everyone was looking at why are people broken and how do we fix them? DSM, all that kind of stuff. Like abnormal psychology became the focus. But there was a very small group of people who wanted to focus on normal people, on the behavior and psychology of normal people, how normal people behaved. And they thought there was as much to gain from that study as it was from everything else. In that group was a gentleman, his name was Dr. William Marston. Dr. Marston wrote a book, did a bunch of stuff. He put the foundation in place for what we know of as the DISC assessment. DISC assessment wasn't created until 20 years later, and people didn't abuse it horribly until 20 years after that. So in the early 1920s, it was really about looking at different styles of behavior along spectrums. D was dominance, and people operated. So how did they operate in terms of their dominance? How did they operate in terms of their influence and interaction, their steadiness, and then how do they interact from a steadiness perspective and from their conscientiousness? How aware are they of the rules, the regulations, the way things are supposed to be done? So there were 4 spectrums, and he would evaluate people in all 4 spectrums. 20 years later, we created an assessment so that we could evaluate it. We could see what these things are. 20 years later, used in corporate America, it goes, oh, let's put them in a box. Let's call them one thing, and that's it. But the idea is that you're all 4 letters. You're not one letter. DISC, that you're 4 letters. Highs and lows. Highs aren't good. Lows aren't bad. Highs and lows both have good and bad. And it changes. This is one of the biggest things. Like a lot of people call me the DISC guy, or they used to. And the reason why is because I'd have a conversation with the experts, the people who've been doing it for 50 years. And I'd ask them this very simple question. I'd say, DISC measures behavior. They're like, yes. I says, well, if DISC measures behavior, is it fixed? They're like, yes. I'm like, this is the question. How can something that measures a movable thing not change? If your behavior isn't the same at home as it is when you're at work, if your behavior isn't the same on a good day as it is as a bad day, how is it that your DISC, which measures your behavioral tendencies, doesn't change if your behavior changes? Makes no sense. And nobody could answer the question. I'm like, how since 1920 has this not been a question?
Right. No, absolutely. Well, and we can attest to that, right? Because after meeting with you, working with you in our organization, I remember one of the very first things you told me is, hey, by the way, what is today won't be tomorrow or most likely in 3 months. And so your people really should be retaking this assessment if this is the assessment you want them taking. And Justin and I ended up taking the DISC right before this podcast, so that we could update it and you could read from a new one in the positions we're in today and the behaviors that we're moving with today. And we both sat here and said, boy, did we answer the questions differently. I've probably taken, 10, 12 DISCs lifetime, maybe more than that.
I've done it at least a half dozen times.
Yeah. So it was interesting to me because for the very first time in taking it, I noticed a discernible difference in the way I was answering the questions.
So when I was living in Vegas, I was doing a lot of therapy work, suicide, anxiety, PTSD. Like doctors would prescribe people to come to me to get them off of their anxiety meds. One session, guarantee it'll be gone. Like that kind of work. And so I have people come in, and what I do is I'd have them take the assessment. I would do the 1 day in-depth change work, and then I'd have them take an assessment the next day, and I could show you how emotional baggage was affecting their profile. And so the idea that your profile is fixed, it's only fixed if you are, if you're not changing, if you're not growing. And in the circles that I run with, there are people whose disc profile is the same for 70 years. It's because they're not changing. They're not doing any work. They're not letting go of anything. They're not having a lot of challenging experiences, because what changes your behavior, your situation, your environment, or your mindset? So if their situation doesn't change, their environment doesn't change, and they don't do anything for the mindset, then their behavior isn't likely to change.
Right. It's been fascinating to learn about all of that. So we thought it would be really fun for you to showcase the work that you do, because I know when we originally brought you in, there was this, especially with people that are not familiar with the work that you've done, they're not familiar with assessments, they're not familiar with someone being able to read body language or behavioral types. There was almost this like, it feels like he's a psychic. It feels like he's reading my mind. I don't understand what's going on here.
Well, like, for example, Alex, you and I haven't talked in months, and most of that it was through IM or direct message on social media.
I am.
Wow,
you just took us back.
Showed my age there. Whoops.
Wow, are we on AOL?
Yeah. Hit me up on my Hotmail.
That's amazing.
What's funny is, so I just literally redid the disc test, like Jess said, within the last hour, and you got it, you glanced at it, and you literally summarized it to the exact scenario of what's been going on in my life and work over the last 60 days.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been fascinating. So I figured we'd do this live for everybody watching right now, so you can really see, one, most of the audience knows you and I pretty well. Mm-hmm. And two, the good news for the audience is we haven't been in a working relationship per se, meaning assessing our behaviors, assessing our company in a handful of months, let's call it. And so there is an out of touchness, of course, because business is always moving. The marketplace is always changing. We're pivoting, we're learning new things, and we definitely are more change agent type of folks. And so it'll be really fascinating to see what you're assessing from our current disc, and then how to use it, how to use the information. So we'll go into that next. So Alex right now has a copy of our disc, and that's probably what you're seeing up on the screen right now. My disc is going to be most likely different than Justin's disc, but Alex will walk us through that. So have at it, do your thing.
I'm going to kind of both read the disc, but I'm also going to tell you how to use the disc as we do this, because what I want to do is I want to show you the true use of the disc. So what I do right now is if I come over here and I pull up the profiles, I look at Justin's profile right now. I've got his up. It says name, page 1. I scroll down. I look at the DISC, look at those scores. I then look at the values, look at those scores. And then I look at the attribute index, which is the last page. And then I scroll back up. So I look at just the first 4 pages. And then I look over at Jess's. I do the same thing. I look at the disc, I look at the values, and I look at the oxyology report, the attribute index, that last one. And then I scroll back up. And then what I do is I close it. Because at that point, I have the baseline and I need to see you guys. Because as I'm talking and as I'm describing, I'm noticing the shifts. I'm noticing the different communication patterns, the different things. As we're talking, easy thing to point out, Jess is nodding and Justin's sitting there with his head kind of flat. He's not moving very much. Justin's going internal. Jess is looking for the volley back and forth. Her eye is higher than it's showing up on the assessment. Right now, she's more in an interactive mode and she's more relaxed. She's not trying to get shit done. So right now, that D that goes down to the I, that goes down to the S, that little graph that she had is not what she's showing up with, because right now she's more in a social setting. So her interactiveness is more important, which means right now, if I had to guess, between getting things done and getting it done right and being efficient versus making sure it's a good experience and high quality, you're leaning more towards quality and experience right now. Is that fair?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what that means is if I were to read your profile, I would say, oh, we've got to make sure we're doing this efficiently. But if I read you, I learned that I can tailor that back just a little bit, laugh, and have a good time, because that's where we are right now. That's how you use the disc assessment. Disc assessment is a last known address. You go to the address and you look around and see, okay, where are they now? This is just a starting point. So when you look at the assessment and I compare the two of you, if we look just at the disc, we call this the disc assessment, but this is not the disc assessment. This assessment that we're looking at, it's called the Advanced Insight Assessment from Intermetrics. It's 3 different psychologies: disc, behavioral tendencies, values, the intrinsic motivators, and the attribute index, which is a form of oxyology, looks at how you process and filter information. So if we keep it straight on the disc, we can only go so far. I won't really go into the attributes, but I have to include the values because the values is much more impactful for your guys' relationship than the disc is going to be for your relationship. And so when we're talking, what I want to look at is just your profile right now: high D, high I, medium, low S, low C. That means that you tend to be aggressive, decisive. You like to get things done. Hey, let's keep moving. What's the next step? You want to make sure that you're interactive, you're outgoing, you're social, you're gregarious, you love talking to people. You're also an extrovert. You get energy from being around people. You fuel off of that. So Justin, you're more of a low I. You're more of an introvert. You're more low I, which means that you are more introspective. You reflect more. But the difference is you're still an extrovert. You still love being around people, which has changed since the last time we did this, where you were a lot more outgoing, you're a lot more introverted. Now you're a lot more introspective and you're extroverted. You like to be around the people, but you want just a little bit of space. So now you're getting the energy from the people where before it was draining you. Is that fair?
Yeah.
That's a shift. That's a change. That's different than how it used to be. And so these are the little nuances that you can pick up just by looking. And the more that you understand what does each of these letters mean, what is the different spectrums, the more you can adjust and interact with it to pull that stuff out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So looking at your profile right now, Jess, if we look at yours, you have the high D, high I, lower S, low C. It kind of does this little like graph, like the downward graph. What that means, right now, your D is your highest, which means you're focused on results. D and C's are focused on results. I and S is focused on experience. Focus being, if that's your highest score, that's going to be what your primary focus or interest in. The way the scores work, it's not 0 to 100, it's distance away from 50. So if you have a D that's 60 and your I is 10, that low introspection is going to be more important to you than the decisive action that you're taking. Meaning, I'm not going to want to move forward until I have time to reflect. Does that make sense?
Interesting. Okay, so let's just clarify that. So let's, my score on a D is an 81. So it's, if it's distance away from 50, I'm upwards of 30.
You're up 31.
Okay, so that would be a higher scale D, right? Okay.
High D.
And so if I have a C and my score is 40, the distance away from 50 is a lower C because I'm below 50.
Correct. It's a lower C. So the way that I look at it is basically 0 to 40 is low, 40 to 60 is mid, and then 60 above is high. It's typically how I look at those.
And just so everyone knows, we talked about the difference in discs changing based on where you're at in life, what you're doing, what your container you're in, environment, people, etc. My C used to be just as high as my D. And that was when I was in corporate America. I was required to be much more detail oriented and I had to create processes. I had to be involved in all of that. I was the one doing it, right? And now in the world I live in now, I have extremely talented people that handle the details and they handle creating the process. So I find it really interesting. Honestly, as time has gone on, my C has gotten lower and lower and lower.
Yeah.
So here's where I like to have some fun. How I got into the DISC assessment was because I was working with a realtor and she was hiring someone. She says, I can't hire that person. I go, why? She says, oh, because they have no attention to detail. And I got all confused. I'm like, what do you mean? I don't understand. She says, oh, they're low C. Low Cs have no attention to detail. To which I asked her, what do I miss? And she laughed. She says, I don't think you miss anything. You see micro muscle movements. Like you don't miss anything. I said, right. So my C is a 6.
Mm-hmm.
And you just watched her brain go,
what? Yes. Right.
So when I look at the DISC, C, high Cs want quality, predictable outcome. The reason they care about process procedure, the reason they care about doing it the right way and listening for what you're looking for is because they want to know what the outcome is before they begin. And if it doesn't go that way, they want to know why. So if they have a good process procedure, if they have all the details, they can narrow it down if it doesn't go right to figure out what the problem was. Low C personality doesn't really care why it didn't work. We're going to go over, around, under, and through and get there. Most people attribute the over, around, under, or through to the high D. That's actually not a high D trait. That is a low C trait. A high D trait is, I don't know if I can say this on this.
You can say anything you want.
A high D trait is fuck it, there's a wall, let's go. And they just hit the wall as hard as they can. They don't go over, around, under, or through. Their idea is I hit the wall. If I hit it, I go through it, or I bounce off, I go the other direction. That's fine. But I'm going to hit that wall and I'm going to keep going. That's a high D trait.
Yes. Yes.
So when you're a high D and a low C, that's where you bring those two things together and you go, I'm going to run as hard as I can. I either hit the wall or I get around it. That get around it is the low C.
That is interesting because I have heard exactly what you just talked about, which is low C's don't care about details. They don't care about process. They won't follow one, right? That's the most important piece. They won't follow one.
They can't.
Yes. And
I want to shift it. I want to shift it because it's not that they won't. It's that they can't. I'm a low C. Even if I want to follow the process, I can't. So what I have to have as a low C is a good recovery strategy, because if the process stops me from getting to the result in any way, shape, or form, or slows me down at the unconscious level, I'm going to circumvent the process to get to where I want to go, because I'm so focused on getting to where I want to go no matter what, that if the process is the problem, I just go around the process. And so that's not conscious. It's not intentional. I know how important it is to follow process. And so what I tell people with the low C is, instead of trying to follow process, treat it like a bike. Don't fall left, don't fall right. And eventually you look like you're staying on process, but you're not. You just have a really good recovery strategy so that you look like this.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense.
Totally makes sense. Because I am particular. I am detail oriented. I want to process. I respect it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think my letting go of who's dictating that process is where I'm aligning with now.
A lot more so, especially with the shifts in your profile.
Yep. Okay, cool. Well, let's carry on. Values.
So values are the intrinsic motivators. They look at why you do what you do, what's driving your behavior. And so, Jess, when you and I talked last time, when you did this assessment before, you had a really high economic, and your political and altruistic scores were much lower. And I said something to you that I said, basically, what you're seeing in the profile isn't who you really are. Who you really are is, and now I look at this profile, I go, oh, cool, she's aligning more.
Yes. Isn't that interesting? When I saw this one, I was fascinated. And I was like, well, there's the work showing up.
Yep. Because, Jess, you had a very high drive for economic return. What's in it for me? How are we growing? We want to be efficient. But it was because you wanted to be able to take care of your people and you wanted your people to thrive. It was always about them. But you had a lot of people in the organization and other things where it was like, it's all about the money, or it always has to be fast and efficient. Like, why can't we connect? Or why can't we? And it's like they couldn't see what was running underneath the part that was coming out. And so now you've been able to shift, get some of that stress off the plate, where now there's a little bit more safety and security in what it is, which allows that to come down a little bit so that now you can put more attention on your people. Because the first thing you needed to do was isolate the threat, and the threat was the finances. The threat was the efficiency. But as we've gotten a little bit better on our efficiencies, as we've automated some of our systems, as we've been able to get better handle on some of the finance stuff, all of a sudden that doesn't need to take priority. So it falls back to its natural place. It's still a driver for you. It's always going to be. But it's now, okay, but what does it do for my people?
Yep. Yeah, I thought that was so interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Is that had dropped down, my political, shot up.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that I look at this one, anything above a 60 tends to be used for decision making. Anything below a 20 is something that I call an aversion, which is basically you've got something against that thing. So if you have 20 in economic, you have probably a perception of those selfish, egotistical people who only care about money. So if you have that below 20 in altruistic, you probably have something about those people who waste all their time helping people and they're not actually getting anything done or really having anything. because they're just bleeding hearts, but they're not having a. So when you have those low scores under a 20, there tends to be a judgment against the people who have a high score in that category.
Got it. Makes sense. Just so everyone knows, I have nothing at a 20 or below, just so we're clear.
Yeah, 23. It's close enough. You do have a judgment because 23 is basically a 20, and you're 23. That's Justin.
I was going to say, I have a 23 on individualistic.
Back and forth. Justin, you have a judgment. Sorry. No, you don't have a judgment. You're good. You're not judgy. Good.
You're
good.
not judgy.
See? I'm 23.
Yeah.
Justin, you're judging. You're judging.
That's fine.
You know, I think it would be really interesting. How would you, when you look at the profiles side by side, we're husband and wife, we're business partners. Where does Justin and I, where's our ebb and flow? Where's our differences that are showing up in the deltas of how we behave?
So if I pull up Justin's profile, I just did yours. I pull up Justin's profile. If you look at it, all of the scores are right in that middle bar. That's what I call a high stress profile. It means you're trying to be all things for all people. It's an adaptation of your original profile. The adaptive scores tend to be a little bit closer to your original, but also just sitting and having a conversation with you, Justin, right now, if I were to read your profile, the way that it's in here, I would say that you're calm, centered, balanced, that you like to interact with people, that you follow process and make decisions when necessary. Just basics on what that says.
Yeah.
If I were to sit and have a conversation with you, I would say that your primary role is playing peacemaker and trying to put out the fires. You tend to be very analytical, analyze a lot of information really quickly, make the best decision you can to make sure that your people and your business are taken care of. And because of that, you've learned how to adapt and be flexible, and you'll step into whatever role you need right now, because right now there's fluidity in your responsibilities because you're trying to keep everything moving.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
Yes.
Just describe my day. Yeah.
Again, what the difference is that's actually in the profile. So when I look at that, you have that high stress profile. I look at the lower D, higher I, that lower S, but then I also go, okay, but he also has this high stress, which means he's able to adapt. He is adapting. He tends to be a little bit more intentional, lower D. He cares about the people, that experience, higher S. He tends to be more expressive, but he's not being very expressive, which again promotes that adaptability that I was talking about, because right now he's got a narrow range of expression. And so all of the information I just did is from the profile, but it's also looking at the person and being able to gather more and more information. So your profile, your natural profile, is probably in that low to medium D, probably in that 30 range. Your I right now is more in that 80 range. Your S is probably more in that 70 to 80 range. And your C is actually a lot lower right now. Your C is between the 20 and 30. And what that means is that, like, when you're in your day-to-day, when you're not trying to put out all of these fires, you're taking some time, you're going, hey, let's interact and touch base, make sure everyone's having a good experience. Let's stop. Let's be intentional about what needs to get done. Okay, there's a couple of roadblocks. Fuck it, I'm going to just kind of move this thing over here, get around that. We'll deal with that later, and let's just keep going. And then you come back into the office and you've got all these people demanding attention. You go back into the middle. What do I need to be? Does that resonate with you? Is that pretty close?
Yeah. Yeah. Literally every time I walk into the office.
Yep.
Who needs me? Where am I supposed to go? Yes. Yes. Now,
so when we look at
go ahead. Sorry. Yep. Oh, yeah. Get to the values.
Yeah. Because I thought something was really interesting on my values here.
Yeah.
I am not what I would consider to be a money motivated person. And yet my economic was.
Nothing to do with your economic.
What's that?
Money has nothing to do with your economic. I know you. Money has nothing to do with economic. Economic is about efficiency, utility, and return on investment. What this is for you, the reason that's so high is we're doing a lot of really stupid things right now, and it's driving me nuts. Why don't we build some efficiency in this thing so that we're not doing things redundantly or doing things that are inefficient? And it's driving you nuts, and it's driving you to have an attention and drive to make sure that the things are efficient, they're done right, and that whatever we put our time into, time's scarce right now. So whatever we put our time into, I want to make sure we're getting something back from that. And so that high economic is return on investment. It has nothing to do with money right now.
Which, and I understand I initially correlated that with money, but it is interesting because I'm very intentional. And this is a conversation I've had with Jess on repeat over the last couple of months around where I'm investing my time and what I'm focusing on. And yet one of the things that I'm also focusing on is over the last 6 months, really shifting focus to the investment side of real estate also, which of course has me staying in the lane of analyzing everything based on return on investment. Whether it be time or money that I'm using, it's all in that same category. And it was never that high for me in the past.
Yeah.
Right. Everything in your life right now is causing you to be intentional with how you prioritize your time and your finances. Your family dynamic, your business dynamic, the work that you're doing, it's all related to being efficient with your time and your finances. And then that lower D score is because it's intentional. You're having to slow things down.
Yeah.
But that low S that you see in your profile is false, because while you're trying to slow everything down, the counterbalance is you have to do it fast. And so you're trying to slow and be intentional, but because of that, you feel a pressure to get everything done. So you have a false S, that false low S score right now.
That would be spot on.
Yeah.
So, Alex, I know you've spent an enormous amount of time using DISC to help others strive for their very right next step, and understand their behaviors and understand what's going on in their organizations, their life, their partnerships, whatever that may be. I know you have recently decided that DISC wasn't robust enough for what you'd like to do with people. And so what are you doing now?
So with the DISC assessment, it looks at 4 spectrums of human behavior. It only looks at dominance, influence, stability, and conscientiousness. Enneagram, 7 different. You look at like Myers-Briggs, it's got the 4 different. They've got all these different assessments that are out there. So what I did was I actually took and kind of did a combination in my own evaluation and created my own personality assessment that looks at 50 plus spectrums of human behavior and then adjusts accordingly. And so when we're looking at, like, for instance, this DISC assessment, we look at you and Justin interacting in a relationship. You're like, let's go, let's go, let's go. He's like, hey, hold on. Let's make sure we're doing it right. You're like, if it's not right, we'll find out. He goes, no, slow down. And you're like, no, we find out it's right. What that creates is it creates 2 different dynamics. So you're talking right now, I'm just talking about high D and low D, but you having a goal, setting the ambition and going, let's go. When you come into the relationship with that, you're coming in with masculine energy. This assessment doesn't look at it. Mine does. So you're coming into the masculine energy, which then leaves him to either become masculine and you guys butt heads and fight. He becomes harmonized, where he creates space for you to do that and supports you, or he steps into the feminine, which he is nurturing and compassionate and helps you understand other people's perspectives. And so it naturally creates a polarity. So when you work together and you have a relationship, you run this interesting polarity game where there are times where you need to have similar, there's times where you need to be one or the other pole, but in order to have the passion, the sex, the excitement, like, you have to go into the extremes of the polarity. So it's learning to play with that. And so it's the coolest thing when you start looking at all of these different aspects. Attachment theory, understanding secure attachment. When I teach you guys, I taught seen, safe, accepted, protected.
Yes.
That's modified from attachment theory. But if you understand how people get triggered, you can also understand how to bring them back. And so one of the things is, you're sitting there, Justin, and you're talking about return on efficiency and what are we doing? And Jess goes, right, but we need to make sure this is taking care of our people. And you go, but it's taking care of the wrong people. And then all of a sudden she says, yeah, but don't you know this one person? And you're like, a person's a person, bringing in his 23. Why the hell do they matter? Because the low individualistic that you have, Justin, causes the people who are tooting their own horns to be a little bit like, come on, dude, seriously, you think you're all that? And so the people on the team or the people in different environments who are needing that special recognition for being unique and special, there's this like, oh yeah, good job. You rode a bike. Good job, dude.
Laughing because this is a constant conversation.
She lights up because she loves being able to give that to that person and that special recognition. And you're sitting there with a smile on your face, trying everything you can to make that smile look genuine.
Yes. You're like, you did your job. Yeah. Okay. I'm like, they did their job. We should do a post. We should do an ad. We should do all the things.
Like, no, go out and do your job again. Yes. Amazing.
Yeah.
So,
right.
Yeah.
But here's the thing, that dynamic also shows up when you're interacting with your kids.
It does. I was just going to bring that up.
So Justin, like, you're like, this is what we're supposed to do. This is the standard. And Justin's like, yeah, but we want to encourage them and we want to support them and we want to push them and we want to push them. That's the masculine, but that's also that high D. We want to push them. We want to give them challenges. It's like, why don't we get them doing the shit they're supposed to do before we give them new challenges? It's like, let's get them enrolled in this thing. Let's get them cleaning their room.
Yes. That's
They
funny.
So
can,
true.
they can do high-end planks off the back wall doing what is the like gymnastics.
Yes, yes.
They can parkour. There it is. They can do the high flame off the thing doing parkour, but let's get them cleaning their room first.
Right, right.
Dynamic between you want to push and grow and expand, and he wants to go, let's get this stuff taken care of.
Yep. Let's just do the basics.
Yep.
Yeah. And I'm like, they can be boring though. And he's like, boring is success.
Boring is success.
Yes. Yes.
This is the importance of understanding human dynamics and human behavior. The more that you understand, DISC is a great tool. It's a great starting point. I'm able to like tell everyone this in 5 minutes, you can conversationally elicit anyone's DISC profile. Understanding values, intrinsic motivators, huge. Why are they doing what they do? But there are only two. There's so many different spectrums. And the best part is you can make up any spectrums you want. You choose 2 points and they operate within that. But the more you understand the rules, the more you understand people aren't the problem. It's the interference pattern that's causing the problem. So if you change or I change, or if I understand why you're doing things the way you are, any of that kind of stuff, the more knowledge you have, the more compassion you can have, because the difference between empathy and sympathy is if that happened to me, I know how I'd feel. Empathy is I can see it through your eyes because I get how you're feeling.
That relatability piece.
Knowledge builds empathy. Knowledge builds compassion. And the more you understand how you do what you do and why other people do what they do, the better it is. And the more robust your leadership, your self-leadership, how you lead and guide yourself, because that hand model of the brain we talk about, that seen, safe, accepted, and protected, you can do that for your people as a leader, but your people aren't doing that for you. You have to do that for you. It's about self-leadership, giving yourself that same seen, safe, accepted, and protected so that you can give it to everybody else.
It's outstanding. Now, those of you listening, the part in which I think is very important here, whether you run a business with your spouse or not, the work to have a bit of insight from a third party like Alex within your relationship, within even a business partnership, I can say is it's invaluable. It's something that teaches you to say, okay, now I totally understand. I was being defensive when you would act a certain way. I thought or had an assumption based on what you were doing because of my own filters and my own programming.
Yeah, it's given us kind of a user manual on how to best communicate with each other.
Yeah, and to not be taking it personally when really it's just learning, okay, now I understand what makes you tick. I understand what that means when you do this thing. So, Alex, when people are looking to say, hey, would Alex do this for me and my husband? Would Alex do this for me and my wife? Would Alex do this for me and my teenager? Is that something you offer, or is that something they can at least access your new assessment through?
Yes, it is something that I offer. I do a lot of these debriefs. I just 2 days ago, I have a couple that I was working with, and they just have a new kid, and they're looking at the verge of divorce, and they're going, what do we do? How do we fix this? And in one conversation, they understood enough about what needs to change that they had hope again. And for me, it's about giving hope. And that's what it is. So like, for instance, like right now, Justin, if you just look over at Justin, just say these words, even though I'm telling him to say this, just notice, you can look at the camera. I want you to listen. Say, I know it's important that we keep moving.
I know it's important that we keep moving.
And we're going to pause for just a second so that I can take care of this piece.
And we're going to pause for just a second so I can take care of this piece.
So you can run as fast as you want.
So you can run as fast as you want.
Lovely.
Look at her face. Like, do you see the shit?
Like, that sounds great. So we're going to get it all done. Like, so good. Yes.
I love it.
Now look over at Justin.
Oh, okay. I've got a piece.
I know my goals are ambitious. They're crazy.
I know my goals are ambitious. They are crazy.
But you've always been there for me, and you're why I can do it.
But you've always been there for me, and you're why I can do it.
Don't you cry on me.
That's the power of this. Knowing what the other person needs to hear to really feel validated, because both of you feel what I said. Both of those are true statements because you both got emotional in saying it. But in receiving it, you did too, because I know what you guys are feeling, but I also know how to communicate it in the other person's language. So I do that for relationships. I do it for business leaders. I do it for executives. But basically, it's like, this is, if you want to communicate it this way, you're not going to get your message across. If you want them to feel what you're saying, this is how you have to say it.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I love it. Well, we are going to absolutely drop a link in how you can get at Alex and get access to his new tools that will allow you to build better rapport, better understanding with anybody, not just spouses, not just business partners, with anybody. What I can tell you is working with Alex, both personally and professionally. We've worked through family dynamics. We've worked through professional dynamics. It is something that is foundationally changing to the way you're able to relate to people, understand people. And it's why we wanted to share him with you guys today. So Alex, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have an event coming up. If you could tell us some quick details on that so people could maybe get at you through that focus point, and then we will also link you out.
On May 24th, I'm doing a rapid analysis class where I'm teaching people how to cold read in under 5 minutes conversationally, cold read a DISC assessment, and how to utilize that to enhance your communication. Basically, it's a 3-hour class. You'll get the replay. And I have 2 different pricing. One is for teams. The entire team gets it. They get a recording that they can then use, or individuals can sign up for the class. But the idea is that the people I have taught this skill to, from a leadership perspective, they've seen a drop in their attrition. They've seen an increase in their productivity and satisfaction within their organization, as well as loyalty and engagement. The people who are in sales have found that they have increased their conversions, both on their leads and in their conversations, as well as an increased number of referrals and an ease of transaction, meaning that as they're moving through the process of the sale, that they're able to better guide and lead their people. And personally, they have found that people are able to communicate more intentionally with their partner, their friends, their family, their kids. And what that has done is it's allowed them to be able to show up from a place of their consciousness, not a place of their baggage. And so they're being able to bring their future into the relationship and gear that direction, instead of bringing the past and have it sabotaging what it is they're trying to create. And so the course, it's on May 24th. It's from 12 to 3 Eastern Daylight Time, and it's a money back guarantee. You're going to be able to cold read when you're done. Otherwise, I'll keep working with you, or I'll give you your money back, because I know this stuff works. And the biggest thing for me, why I do what I do. When I was a kid, I was told I'd never graduate high school. Nobody understood me. I thought I was broken, and I had to learn that I wasn't. And so now I spend my time going around and helping people understand you are not broken. There is nothing wrong with you. You're perfect just the way that you are. We need to structure an environment so that you can win. And we need you to be able to work with people in a way that makes it so that everybody wins. And that's why I do what I do. Thank you guys so much for having me on today.
Yeah, Alex, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. It is always so much fun, such a pleasure, so enlightening. So we appreciate you being here and spending the time. I know you traveled this morning and you still jumped on with us. So we appreciate you very much, sir.
Of course. Thank you for having me. Have a great day.
All right. Cheers.
Thanks, Alex. All right. So we could literally talk with Alex about ourselves and communication for hours, if not days. But if you have any questions or comments about the information that you had today, make sure to leave a comment below.
Yeah, we're going to drop a link on all things Alex, his upcoming event, how you can get his new and improved assessment. And if you have any questions from today, please comment, DM, or hit that link and get at us, because we want to hear from you. And we'll see you in the next one.
And we'll see you on the next one.
We're going to see you in the next one.
We're going to see you on the next one.
We can't wait to see you. We love you.
See you.
I love you.
Love you.